introduction to small modular reactors, how they fit into this European R&D scale, and basically trying to make the basis of what you will be doing here during this week. So, and please, if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to ask. I will be asking also some comments from you from time to time, so please, I hope some active discussion here. So basically, just to iterate, so just to basically introduce to you small modular reactors, so that, well, I mean, all of you have heard about them, but we don't always talk about the same things when we talk about SMRs, because it's like small magical reactors that basically can do everything. And then European R&D, and also this ELSMOR project. Since you're here in the ELSMOR summer school, you have to hear about ELSMOR also. And then, of course, something on SMRs once back again. So, but to start from the beginning, like nuclear energy history. So, nuclear energy power plants, they started small. We are talking about now small modular reactors, but we are not talking about early reactors, which were basically just test cases for the larger, bigger plants. So, and nowadays, the currently operating power plants are mostly designed and built in the 70s, 80s. So they are basically like 40 years old and still running, but we are getting more and more into the issue that we need to extend their lifetimes and so on. However, they do provide currently about 1/4 of the EU's electricity, 1/2 of low carbon electricity. They are basically large light water reactors, and with the like hundreds of megawatts to a gigawatt scale. For various reasons, nuclear energy power plant construction stopped in the late 80s. For the 90s, there were basically not much. People were just talking about decommissioning and waste management at that point. But in the early 2000s, we saw what we were starting to talk about, like nuclear renaissance. This was, at least for me, the place where I came into the business, because I was like a young student in the early 2000s. And basically at that point, there was like new nuclear power plant construction projects in Finland, in France, in USA, starting to be quite a lot in all other places. We were supposed to have this newfangled EPR up and running by 2009 in Finland. And also for the R&D, there was a concept of generation 4 reactors. It was planned to have these kind of new reactors that were basically having a closed fuel cycle, high temperature reactors, all these things, demonstrations in 2020s, which basically at that point, 2020s was going to be a really cool time, because we would have all of this new stuff coming on, and we would have these all new nuclear power plants that people were operating and building. Well, it was our last best hope for nuclear energy, but it failed. Well, somehow. We are not having a closed fuel cycle now. We have in Finland EPR reactor in commissioning phase. It's being once again a bit delayed because they found some loose parts in the turbine, but that happens. But we are very trusting that it's up and running by the end of this year. But we have not seen actually this kind of new boom for nuclear energy during like 2010s. So there was supposed to be nuclear renaissance, but there was not. So, I mean, this is probably history for all of you, but any ideas or any thoughts why we did not have nuclear renaissance? Please. Okay, Fukushima accident 2011. Yes. One could say that it really like crashed some projects, and it also like destroyed nuclear energy use in Japan, Germany. Please.
Economics, energy economics, and renewable energy there are more and more cheaper than before. So
Yeah.
the economics, I think it's the main.
Yeah. Basically, huge effort to push like new renewable energies, for instance, wind and solar has reduced their costs quite a lot, and it was huge technology push by Germany, by China, that like basically reduced the cost for economics. Yes, please.
A lot of effort has been, now been put into decommissioning reactors that has been operating from the 70s and the 80s, and rather than research on new reactors.
Yeah.
That
So
is one of the prime concerns.
yeah. So basically, we are not. We have for the renewables. We had lots of technology push, but similar push has not been happening with the new technology for nuclear energy. Okay, please.
Public opinion.
Yeah, public opinion, but it's basically function of perception of safety, perception of economics. So please, back there. Yeah. Well, I mean, I come from Finland, and it's been notorious that the Finnish nuclear plant projects have been taking quite many years to get construction license and so on. And this is actually something that has been understood also as an issue, that if every country has their own licensing regime, and which is not harmonized, and every power plant needs to be like modified to a local place, how are you going to get like this learning from doing and learning from production of stuff? Okay. Okay, please.
I would like to say maybe because we solve the problem to manage the nuclear waste.
Okay, with nuclear waste management, it has been said that this is one of the key issues for the public perception also. Yeah, and back there. Yes, indeed. What happened in the late 2000s was the fracking boom in the USA, which basically, at that point, it was the natural gas was very expensive, and with the fracking boom, it became extremely cheap, and it basically tanked all of these future nuclear power plant projects in USA. It tanked their next generation nuclear power program in USA. I think that basically, like we have got. There is only one thing I would like to add here, and it has been the difficulties with the construction of these few first nuclear power plants, because they have been taking time in Finland, in France, in USA, and it has taken away the public trust. So if I put all of these things into the timeline, we started with the new nuclear power plant construction in mid 2000s, and within few years, few things became obvious. One thing was the natural gas prices got much cheaper, so no new nuclear power plant projects were started. New nuclear power, these ongoing construction projects were starting to have issues because nobody had built nuclear power plants in the West for 10, 15 years. And then we will, at that point, people were still a bit optimistic, but they were seeing that there also renewables were getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. And then, of course, Fukushima, which brought high opposition for use of nuclear energy in some countries like Japan and Germany, but at least in Finland I think in other places also, we can see that this kind of public perception rebounded in a couple of years. But what remained is the perception that we cannot build new nuclear power plants because there was project difficulties and construction difficulties, and also the issue of, let's say, perception that there is cheaper and cheaper energy. Okay, but since we're in the nuclear field, lessons learned. We need to adapt to these lessons. And what small modular reactors, they are basically one way of trying to learn from these mistakes, or trying to learn from this. So basically they are smaller. So the idea is that they are not the mega project that you need to bid all of this. It's basically defined small as 300 megawatt electric or less in power per reactor to better fit into this current deregulated markets. Some SMRs break this rule, but anyway, they aim to be modular. So we aim to have smaller reactors that we actually can serially manufacture, so that we learn from the first of a kinds. So we can actually get this kind of serial manufacturing of SMRs, or nuclear reactors. So, and of course, this needs to be so that the reactor in Finland is similar to one in Italy, is similar to one in France. So we will need to have some sort of harmonization. And however, there are still reactors, so all the nuclear related responsibilities stay. We need to have them safe, hopefully, with the safety taking care of simple risks such as passive systems, with good enough solutions instead of perfect. And the smallness also enables faster deployments of light water reactor designs, and also easier demonstration of non-light water reactor technology. Like Gen 4 was defined as 1 gigawatt scale reactors, which is a very large power plant to demonstrate on a first of a kind basis. But maybe the smaller ones are easier. Of course, we're still waste was mentioned. We still need to take care of the waste responsibly. In Finland, we have the first in the world spent nuclear fuel disposal facility under construction, supposed to be licensed to operate in a couple of years. So as a Finn, I consider that basically we have the solution also for the waste, but this, of course, is up to debate. Anyway, so there is a large number of SMR designs under development. We will hear more in detail in the next presentation about them, but just to give a very short overview. There is in Canada, there are basically this kind of micro reactors going on, and also plans for new SMRs, especially in this BVRX 300, which is US design. We will hear about that later also today. There in the United States, there has been NuScale that has been in the licensing for quite a long time, and also this boiling water reactor, as well as different kinds of advanced reactors getting lots of federal money. In United States, they have the Rolls-Royce UK SMR. In France, there is a French SMR developer, Nubard. This is consortium by basically almost all of the French parties. We will hear them about Nubard tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow, yes. Well, Russia has been putting a lot of effort in these barge and marine reactors. And in China, they are basically trying one of everything. So they have a high temperature pebble bed reactor under commissioning. They have light water SMR under construction. They have designs for DC heating reactors. If you can name it, they're trying to build one. And in South Korea, there has been this smart light water reactor, 110 megawatt reactor for especially for desalination in hot and dry countries. Just to give you a short examples, first is French New World. It's a concept development original by CEA, EDF, Naval Group, and Technicatom, and three of these are also in ELSMOR. And also in this New World group has some recent partnerships, for instance, Belgian Tractable. It's basically a large effort by France to create European SMR to complement this larger EPR lineup. It's a passive core cooling, and basically it is kind of like there's a reactor, and then there's the containment, which is inside water pool. So now France is putting like hundreds of millions into development of these projects so that they would have first of a kind in 2030s. In UK, they are basically trying to renew their own nuclear energy industry. UK had domestic nuclear power plant program. They had gas-cooled reactors, Magnox's advanced gas-cooled reactors, and then one LVR. But basically, the whole industry was pretty much decimated in 2090s. And when they saw the need to start new nuclear power program, only thing they could do is basically start buying international designs. And even their operator is EDF, so French. So they were basically like looking, okay, we need to kickstart our own industry. So they put a huge effort and came up with the light water reactor technology, pretty large for SMR, but anyway, it's development spearheaded by Rolls-Royce, and they are aiming to have the first ones on the grid in early 2030s. So basically, just to give you an idea of scale of the emphasis, so basically there is almost $500 million in funding for development of first of these reactors. So this is a very big national push there. And third example is GE Hitachi's BVRX 300. So basically GE Hitachi previously had this large nuclear power plants on offer. There was this ESBVR, enhanced simplified boiling water reactors, which they fully licensed it in the USA. But then they were, when natural gas prices went down, they suddenly found out they are having no customers. Huge effort, nothing. They decided not to bother anymore, but a couple of years back, they came up with a very highly simplified 300 megawatt boiling water reactor. And they were very cautious to start before getting customers, but they have been getting more and more kind of like initial customers now. Ontario Power Generation in Canada, you will hear about it later today. Tennessee Valley Authority in USA, potentially like 10 industrial sites in Poland, bought by the industrial magnate, and also referenced design for Estonian startup Fermi Energia. And these kind of customers are really the new kind of customers enabled by the small size of SMRs. They are not national power grid users, they are like small startups. There's industrialists who are interested in getting their own reliable clean power source. But to go from global to Europe, so basically, of course, this kind of like interest has been brewing for some time. In European Union, nuclear energy collaboration is handled by Euratom Treaty. So please raise your hands, who knows of Euratom or who has heard of Euratom? Okay, so not that many actually. So basically, who has heard of European Union? Okay, so Euratom is a companion program to European Union. Everything related to nuclear is in Euratom, and European Union is everything non-nuclear. So basically, if in Finland we have the legislation and international agreements on nuclear energy, they come through the Euratom Treaty. And so basically all of this kind of nuclear activity in EU is governed by that. So basically when Britain did the Brexit, they did not just leave European Union, they left Euratom also, which meant that they need to agree on all of these things, how to handle safeguards and so on alone, instead of like keeping up with Europe. They have the R&D part, which is in Euratom research and training programs, which covers European fission and fusion research. For a long time, this fission focus has been in the safety on long-term operation of the nuclear power plants and as well as the waste disposal. Like you commented earlier that much of the focus has been like on this kind of stuff, not for the new things. But from 2016 onwards, because SMRs have become more popular, focused column SMRs has been part of these programs. There is now also a joint EU SMR partnership in preparation to respond to the high-level commitment of USA and UK to deploy SMRs. So basically aiming to get more and more European effort into actually getting SMRs into Europe. But basically example of this kind of R&D effort is that basically there are calls to make research proposals, and then different research organizations like VTT, Polyni, and so on will basically make a proposal and try to get the project. Just to give you some idea that basically the scope of this call, like actually should investigate improved safety features of light water SMRs. Investigate, so it's always about the safety in Euratom, but it might be like technical, but also the research should also propose methodology, how this kind of this, not only investigate the safety, but also how this safety is ensured, as well as this kind of effects on the licensing process. So if you have new like passive systems that has not been licensed before, how you're investigating it, how you're ensuring that its safety is guaranteed, and how it affects this kind of process to get this licensed. There is also like due account should be taking the safety features for refilling and spent fuel management. So it's always like, even when we are designing new reactors in Europe, we should always take into account how we are decommissioning them. We are having a globally big issue with the legacy waste, the first experimental reactors, and where they just like tried something and put it away, and then 50 years back, people coming in and looking, okay, what have we here? So it's basically like this kind of unidentified waste. And this is something we don't want to have anymore or more. Yeah. So, but, sorry, wrong way. In 2016, there was this first call for SMR research. And it was like, everybody was like, really, woo! Finally, we are getting like looking into new technology also. So everybody was making consortiums, like at least 3 were focusing mostly on SMRs. Like VTT, I was coordinating one of the proposals. I think Marco, you were coordinating another of the proposals. We had also GRS, the Germans, coordinating 3rd proposals, and everybody was like trying to pitch, and well, it all failed. So huge effort, like 3 different consortiums. It's basically like getting this proposal is several months of work and huge effort, and everybody was just like going, okay, now some other people got this funding. So time for rethink. So there is this Nugenia community at that point on European coordinating or collaboration of European R&D organizations. And under that community, Erik Hanus, who will be presenting tomorrow, was facilitating it. Okay, maybe we should not waste resources. So let's all join together and make one proposal instead of like competing with each other. So me and Marco and people from GRS, we started like to actually collect this kind of like combined our ideas, and thus ELSMOR proposal was born, and we won the next. And finally, we have this new project. So, but anyway, so basically under this kind of Euratom research and training program, the last course, there are like 4 different projects. This Germany Plus was the winner of the first one. It was basically old consortium that's looking into gas-cooled reactors, high-temperature reactors. ELSMOR won the second one, and then we had later on 2 new projects, MaxSafer, which is on high-fidelity modeling of SMRs, and ELSMOR SMR, which is on a supercritical water reactor, which is like water is over 3 megapascal pressure, so that it doesn't boil anymore. But it's basically corrodes and destroys everything. So these kind of material studies. But anyway, this is kind of like breadth of different like new SMR stuff that came out of this course. For ELSMOR, we are having a project that's aiming to investigate improved safety features of light water reactor SMRs, especially on passive safety functions as a safety justification methodology. It was started in 2019, just before COVID. So I have been calling this a COVID project because we have been quite a lot of remote and teleworking. So it's very nice to see people actually nowadays. So basically, there must be, by the directive, EU directive and so on, safety features that prevent early release. There's basically on a high level, there are 3 high level safety requirements for the nuclear power plants. One is that the decay heat must be handled, so there must be core cooling all the time, and then the physical barriers to radioactive release must be maintained. So that's the second one. Anyone remember what's the third one? What's the 3 very high level safety requirements? Sorry? No, that's passive safety is the way to handle these things.
So the fuel itself and the coolant, the
yeah? Criticality. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, you need to contain the radioactivity, you need to cool the fuel and cool the system, and you need to maintain that there is no, or you need to be able to, how do you say, control the criticality so there is no reactivity. So for criticality, we did not look into this that much because basically there are not that many SMR specific things. Big issue for the SMR is the core cooling using passive systems. So passive systems are a big focus in ELSMOR, but it relates to the core cooling function. But we also looking on the research on methods for the robust safety assessments. There has been several prior proposals, especially for the advanced reactors, but how they fit into SMRs, and demonstration of the applicability of these tools. We will have demo test case ELSMR, which is being mainly built by Polimi, and of course dissemination to stakeholders. This is just a consortium, so we have 15 partners in 8 countries. Lots of all around EU and also Switzerland and Ukraine. And basically the idea has been that we first identify, improve these kind of like new safety features of proposed designs and review these. We are developing safety case methodologies as well as looking what is specific to SMRs when you compare to like large light water reactors. And then we are having 2 different core cooling safety functions with the experimental issues, and then of course containment safety functions, and then this kind of like example of safety case. So basically, you will hear about this from Sebastian Buchholz later, but what he did in his work is basically a review of these safety directives and screening of SMR designs and looking how these things fall in line. Then basically, I can already spoil you that lots of this information for instance, these very essential like roadblocks on safety justification is a bit still missing because many of these SMR designs are not mature, but as they go towards licensing, they're getting more and more mature. Then we develop methodology for the safety justification. I will be talking about this tomorrow morning, and also looking at the various aspects of SMRs, like this reactivity control for cooling and containment, but also issues on multi-units plants, how you actually like for humans to, how in the control room, if you, instead of 1 plant, you actually have 12 plants, how you're actually like managing this, or also decommissioning and fuel management. We have looking into these passive safety systems, how they actually are modeled, how we are experimentally verifying models. You will hear, well, you will hear quite a lot about this during the next days, and also you have the visit to the SEAT experimental facility where we are performing experiments, and also looking. Basically, many of these SMRs have a small containment on the like integral pressure vessel and a small containment around it, and then located in a pool of water. So how we can actually like certify that this arrangement really works. But basically, these are the things that you will be hearing about, discussing for the next few days. But to basically close it up, what makes the SMRs tick? Basically, like there is always technology push and market pull. So basically, technology push, development of novel technology is always fun. Many of us are in R&D, so figuring out new things has a merit of its own. It's probably not enough because nobody wants to give money to scientists to figure out new things anymore. They want to have like something that actually brings good to the society, which is of course nice. But we also have this kind of appeal to novelty fallacy. So this kind of innovation is very much favored over the maintenance. So basically, we are always, as a society, we're always going for the new things instead of like upkeeping things. Even if we could upkeep like lots of infrastructure for very many decades. But there is also true improvement over previous designs, getting like more out of the same. So there is basically technology push that, okay, we have these new ideas. We want to push new things to the market. We want to do this. But there's also needs to be the market pool. There's a need of the society, of the market. Very often people are just saying that people need cheap energy. But thanks, Marco, for mentioning the energy trilemma, which is very important here. It's not enough to have like cheap energy. It needs to be also sustainable, so that it doesn't bring in new greenhouse gas emissions. But what we are seeing also, we need to have energy security. If we are having this kind of huge changes in prices, and we are starting to, in Europe, we are now, thanks to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and resulting like events, we are losing the natural gas supply, and we actually need like secure supply of sustainable energy that's affordable. So basically, this is where actually need for new nuclear energy comes from. And also, it's what people think they want, what's popular. Like, because basically, renewables were popular, which made many countries put lots of money into their technology policy to support the like renewables, which made the renewables cheap. So it's basically this kind of like technology policy is driven by what people think they want, or what decision makers think people want. So with SMRs, we have potentially simpler safety systems, relying on passive features like natural circulation of coolant. Just an example, here's the Hitachi's ESBVR, where you can see lots of like different water pools, lots of different safety systems, and their concept sketch of BVRX with just very few. They are actually adding more there, but hopefully they will not end up like this. Potentially there is less complexity, so passive systems allow for it, hopefully, allowing for simpler projects that eventually should lead to faster deployment and more resilient system. Sorry, it's a bit dry air here. Of course, this depends on if these can be verified and licensed, and if this can be done in many countries similarly. I think we have Sam here back in the room. He will be talking about the international licensing experience tomorrow. Yes, so you will be hearing much more there. And then we have the constantly increasing ambition. Like for instance, when we started planning ELSMOR, like 4 years ago, at that time, most of the vendors were saying, okay, we are having our designs so that we will be having a commercial offering in mid-30s, which was like 20 years ago. And that's basically time for basic science, in a sense. But now, what we are hearing is that the first SMR project starts operation in at the end of this decade, and which timeline means that deployment should be very imminent. Just last week, there was this new OECD NEA report on nuclear energy, and they had also this kind of like a list of SMR designs with defined milestones and active milestones, and it's actually quite long. So it's basically like we are having the ambition. There's also these international organizations who are willing now to put more and more effort into harmonization or streamlining of requirements. And these are regional, such as European actors or international. But last but not least, SMRs are a very popular story nowadays. Everybody is talking about SMRs. I mean, for nuclear engineers, it's just a bit simpler nuclear reactor. But for the people there, they are basically saying that I don't like nuclear power plants, but I like SMRs. We have a huge amount of examples there. And then as an engineer, you go like, what the? But it is a story. It's a story on how nuclear energy production started, how it basically like oh, thank you very much. How it encountered some obstacles and failed. But during this failure, it got reinvented. It reimagined itself. And with this new understanding of itself, is poised to bring new fortunes to the world. And this is a story which is basically very similar to the hero's journey, a monomyth of a hero that goes to the adventure, faces obstacles, and needs to, like, fails, but needs to reinvent himself. And with this, like, reinvention, gets back and wins and brings fortune back to the world. It's basically the oldest story in the world. And now we are basically in nuclear, we are retelling it. The Hitachi is telling it with the ESBVR was a failure, they knew it, and now BVRX is coming and bringing all the good stuff. But we are telling many times. And these stories do have power because people want to, like, learn that we have been learning from the adversity. And now I think that, well, I mean, can you name instances where, for instance, SMR is, as a concept, is something that people are pushing even if they haven't liked nuclear energy before?
The smart reactor.
Sorry?
The smart reactor where the Saudi and the Koreans, they have started building this. So I don't think so. They have had nuclear power plants before they.
Yeah. So basically, there's this smart collaboration between Saudi Arabia and Korea. Yes. But I mean, well, Marco, you have been telling about Italy. So what's what's the SMRs in Italy? What's the public opinion on SMRs in Italy?
That could be probably one of the few chances that we have to reopen the discussion.
Yeah.
Because, as you mentioned at the beginning, the story about the large reactors in the Western countries is not really positive.
Mm.
So it's very difficult to go to the public opinion or to the political side saying, okay, we have this problem, this energy trilemma, and we need nuclear energy, so we want to build an EPR in Italy. Because very easily, the opponents would say, okay, come on, well, look at Finland, look at France. Extra cost, huge delays, 15 billion euros instead of 3, 15 years of construction instead of 5, cannot fly. And that's it. Yeah. So if you want to open again the discussion, you have to offer a new solution. And we don't know whether SMRs will be the best, the final, the best solution. Anyway, it is a solution. And as you are mentioning, the storytelling is as well as important than technology.
Yeah. I mean, I know many old engineers who are very angry because their perfect or very good solution never got off the ground because something that was more popular got off the around. So please, nobody here, don't grow up to be this kind of like angry engineers, but understand that we need to have the good technology, but also the good story. But yeah. Are you trying to, back there, raise the hand? No, okay. But I will tell you one example. Yes, please.
Yeah, this week we will be critical to the nuclear industry. We are talking about blackouts. The renewable energy sources have many problems in the grid. We are speaking about the grid stability. And blackouts will push the public more to like call for SMRs. And non-electric applications of SMRs also like will add the value of this technology. We are speaking about hydrogen generation and
Yeah. And it's very unfortunate that we are looking toward like something bad happening, but it's basically a real danger that if we are not having a balanced system, that there is going to be bad things. And if there is going to be a blackout, then the whole discussion changes from let's say previously it has been about getting energy cheap and with environment reducing greenhouse gases, but it will change into securing that no blackouts will happen. And it's not necessarily all the good for the environment, because it will also mean that, for instance, we will be relying on fossil fuels more. But hopefully we are, of course, like looking into further acceptance on nuclear energy. But for the SMR, I just want to give you one example from Finland, because I'm a Finn. So basically, for quite some time, we have had politicians going on that they don't like nuclear power, they don't like the big plants, but they actually like these SMRs. It's Finnish Green Party's policy for the big part of the 2010s was that, okay, we don't like big nuclear power plants, but we support the investigation into SMRs, because I'll be the old, but they're open with the new. But the latest policies even just took away the dismissal of big nuclear power plants, because they were not seen anymore as that bad. So basically, this kind of like story, there's a huge number of people who have been saying that they oppose nuclear power, but they have been seeing that, okay, that this might not be such a big issue for them anyway, but they will need like a respectable door out. And basically these SMRs have become one of these respectable ways out from this kind of like very strong opposition. So I just want to like end this like, okay, we are talking about safety, we are talking about technology, and this is very important, this is our job. But please also remember that at least some people need to tell the story also. But yeah, thanks for your attention. And I think we have some time for discussion.
Thank you, Will.
So the floor is open.
Yes, we have 10 minutes for other questions and answers.
Please.
you say in your opinion.
Yes.
Thinking about public acceptance, how do you manage to do possibility of human waste in other things pronounced? How do you get accepted? Because it's something very marketing now, and we talk about the waste is something very
Yeah. So basically, it's not something that came out like suddenly. It's a very long-term process, which started in the 80s. So in the 80s, they decided that we will need to dispose the nuclear waste in Finland. And they started looking into potential sites and found out that actually in Finland we will have huge amount of potential sites for the final disposal facility. So the geology was not an issue. But of course, the local acceptance was. So basically, they started asking communities that, okay, who wants to start discussing that might we actually put a repository here, and with no obligations. You just like start the discussion, and then there was several volunteer communities who were like having this kind of like discussion, what it would mean, what would be the steps, what kind of stuff there would be, and eventually this kind of discussion led to a decision that basically this waste would be disposed in Olkiluoto. So this decision in principle happened in 2003, and it's basically requirement for the decision was the local acceptance, that the local community said okay. So basically this kind of like a discussion and debate and so on happened gradually in like 90s during a decade and a half before this kind of decision was made. And it's basically very important that the local community has a say. Of course, in Finland we have this thing that our society is very high trust based on we are ranked or in global scale very highly on trust, and basically people trust also these kind of like officials and government that basically they trust our regulator that they will like regulator is looking that this is okay and so on. So, but you're actually very correct that big issue with the nuclear waste disposal is the people's acceptance and political acceptance. And I think that what is the lesson learned from Finnish process is that basically you need to have the community acceptance before you start the project. And this is basically something that you will get through long-term dialogue. So usually, if you're looking at the US project where they just said that okay, you come out, and then there's this kind of huge local opposition to that, compared to this kind of Finnish approach where they have that okay, who's willing to start discussion, and then you are getting on the path and commitment and so on. So similarly, we had this Fennovoima project that had 4 sites shortlisted to 2 sites, and they had actually competition which town will get this kind of nuclear power plant. So they had actually competing people, and when the decision was made, there were interviews with all the guys who were crying that it's so good that their children get the opportunity to work in their community still. So unfortunately, of course, due to that Russian aggression, Fennovoima projects got cancelled because we cannot work with Rosatom anymore. But still, it's still one of the examples of how you get the local acceptance. You start talking with them and ask for volunteers. You're not pushing it to them. Please.
Yes, nowadays, China, as an example, the construction of big nuclear power plants is not a problem, as in Europe or in the United States. And I have a question related to how the SMR approach is actually changing the bureaucracy and the problems that are not in the technology, but in the European structure, in this case, of delays and
So basically, why China is successful, it's basically they had a first phase where they just built a few power plants, second phase more, third phase more, fourth phase probably even more power plants construction. So basically they built up the supply chain, they built up the experience, they started to do this. And basically SMRs are trying to do this like with the smaller plants, so you would get like serial production going. And the big issue, of course, is how to like ensure that there's not huge variation between different places. And this is an ongoing issue. And there are like IEA projects on trying to look into this. And so I think the actual expert on this to answer this question is back there. So and I think that you will be discussing this tomorrow.
Yeah, it's just to give a high-level view on you talking about public acceptance and licensing. In Canada, we see our greatest opposition is where we have no power plants, no nuclear power plants. Close to a power plant, people know that there's jobs, they're self-sufficient, they have a good view of what they want to do. But a lot of that we found is those companies explaining to the public what they're doing, gaining that acceptance of the public. So there's a lot of, it's a give and take relationship with the public. And I think when SMRs coming, the biggest point I want to make, they're a new technology, they are arguably simpler, but this is a good chance to make sure they stay that way. So make sure that they stay safe, make sure that we always keep safety as the number one priority. Because like you said, it's a story. We don't want that story to go off and have, and there's two ways it can go off. There can be a safety event or even economically have those reactors that don't move forward because there's complications in construction. They run 3 times the cost. So those are the factors that play with the public for nuclear as well.
I think there was a,
In terms of investment and familiarity with the new technology, do you think SMR is currently or will be very soon a very viable option for newcomer countries who want to kickstart their nuclear program?
Well, basically, I would very much like to see first SMRs being built in a country where there is experience in the use of nuclear energy. There are some SMR startups who are aiming for newcomer countries directly, and my personal belief is that this is a very dangerous pathway to take, especially since if there's something that goes wrong, it's basically like it's locally bad thing, but it's also internationally bad thing. But I'd say most of these kind of like very big respectable projects aim for the national first of a kind, or I guess in case of like North America, like US technology to Canada, which is still close enough. But after the demonstration, I don't see why not. For instance, in Estonia, Fermi Energia is saying that they want to have second of a kind of reactors. So first of a kind in country of origin, and then just like trying to get this to Estonia, where there's currently no nuclear power plants. So in that sense, I think this kind of system is very viable. One thing with these SMRs, of course, is that with the if you have just one, it's going to be very difficult to actually have this kind of organization for all the like safety organization, waste management organization, the regulator, national regulator, and so on. Just built on because of like 300 megawatts of electric. So you will need to have a plan for more. I think that basically for nuclear energy, especially since we have we need to manage the waste and so on. If you are actually going for nuclear energy, you should like have a large enough investment or not at all. But if you have just like one small plant in the country, you're going to have long-term problems. But of course, for many newcomer countries, the need for electrifying, the need for getting more power, the need for getting more GDP, which is basically pushed by this new electricity. So of course, we would want to have many countries like growing their economy, and basically can like start with the small and go with the bigger. And this is of course like hopefully what happens. But also of course for many countries, some sort of regional approach to, for instance, waste management would be very good, so that if you had like some region where you have many newcomer countries, maybe they could come up with a way to pool resources.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you for this first lecture, for the introduction to the SMR topic. Now we can move directly to the second contribution by Mr. Halid Subki. He's a scientific leader and coordinator within the IAEA of all the items or all the actions on the SMR side. I think that